One of the most surprising twists in Star Wars: The Clone Wars was the revelation that Barriss Offee was a traitor to the Jedi Order, responsible for a terrorist attack on the Jedi Temple. This was unexpected, not only because it caused a massive snarl for the established lore, but also because previously, Barriss was usually depicted as one of the gentler and more level-headed Jedi. For most of the Clone Wars, she served as a Jedi healer, caring for wounded clones and Jedi. What then caused this seeming heel turn? Why did Barriss mastermind such a terrible attack when she was usually so caring for others? In this video, we'll be exploring these questions.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Barriss Offee was trained by Jedi Master Luminara Unduli, one of the Jedi Order's most dogmatic masters. Over the course of her apprenticeship, she was taught rigid adherence to the principles of the Jedi Code, which, like her master before her, she became completely devoted to. By the start of the Clone Wars, she was shaping up just like Master Unduli, who was quite proud of young Barriss and considered her to be a model student. Then, the Clone Wars happened. Barriss suddenly found herself leading armies of clones into battle as a Jedi commander, fighting in the Grand Army of the Republic. In a matter of months, she watched as the Jedi all but abandoned their former duty as the galaxy's peacemakers and became completely wrapped up in the Clone Wars. As Master Unduli and other Jedi explained to Barriss, they didn't see this as a dereliction of their duties. They saw their participation in the Clone Wars as a necessary evil, something that would ultimately save trillions of beings from the Sith. At first, Barriss believed this too. During the Clone Wars, the Jedi Masters often saw fit to withdraw Barriss from the front lines to help the wounded. She was an extremely gifted healer and saved countless lives, clone, Jedi, and loyalist volunteer alike. She cared deeply for those under her care and did everything in her power to minimize their suffering, often driving herself to exhaustion just to make dying clones a little more comfortable. This was extraordinarily taxing, both physically and psychologically. Many of Offee's patients were maimed in the most gruesome ways imaginable, and it took a great deal of willpower for her to hold it together during some of her bloodier missions. Barriss Offee spent most of the Clone Wars doing the work of a Jedi, but many of her contemporaries, as she observed, were not. In conflicts like the Battle of Foe Rose, she watched Jedi-led Republic forces destroy staggering numbers of innocent lives to beat back the Separatists, laying waste to entire planets just to claim victory. She became disillusioned with the Republic cause, particularly during her lengthy assignment to a medical team on Drongar, where one of the bloodiest battles of the entire war played out. On Drongar, Barriss spent months treating some of the nastiest wounds the universe had ever seen, only for both sides to abandon the planet after its sole valuable resource was rendered useless. Offee had watched her friends die or become traitors, had seen troops under her command go through some of the worst misery imaginable, and it all ended up being for absolutely nothing. These experiences led Barriss to become disillusioned with the Republic and with the Jedi Order. As the war dragged on and became ever more blatantly pointless, her disillusionment turned to anger. She became radicalized enough that, late in the war, she masterminded the bombing of the Jedi Temple, even going so far as to frame her former close friend Ahsoka Tano for the crime. Despite Offee's efforts to cover her involvement in the attack, she was found out, captured, and brought before a tribunal to whom she delivered a fiery confession.
I did it because I have come to realize what many people in the Republic have come to realize, that the Jedi are the ones responsible for this war, that we've so lost our way that we have become villains in this conflict, that we are the ones that should be put on trial. All of us! And my attack on the temple was an attack on what the Jedi have become. An army fighting for the dark side, fallen from the light that we once held so dear. This Republic is failing! It's only a matter of time.
At the start of this video, we asked why it was that Barriss was willing to carry out such a terrible attack when she was usually known for being such a compassionate person. The answer lies within the question. Barriss came to hate the Jedi to the point of violence because she was such a compassionate person. She ordered the attack on the Jedi Temple because of the misery she saw on the front lines of the Clone Wars. Misery she blamed on the Jedi. Her work as a healer exposed her to the most gruesome side of the Clone Wars, and she was too caring to be able to turn a blind eye to the immeasurable suffering caused by the war. Barriss's master had taught her strict adherence to the Jedi Code, to live a life based around virtues like compassion. But in the Clone Wars, she watched many other Jedi abandon those very principles. As the war went on, she watched countless Jedi start acting exclusively as generals, not as peacekeepers reluctantly filling a vital power vacuum. The Masters preached that they were the keepers of peace and not soldiers, but after years of hard fighting, that stopped being true for a good many Jedi. Barriss's experiences as a Jedi healer, especially on Drongar, also showed her an unpleasant truth about the Clone Wars that only a select few picked up on, that both the Republic and the Confederacy were deeply evil. There was no right side in the Clone Wars. The Battle of Drongar was far from the only pointless part of the Clone Wars. Indeed, the whole war was pointless. Barriss Offee came to believe that all the misery and suffering she saw in the Clone Wars were entirely unnecessary, and she began to detest the Republic and the Jedi for keeping the war going. Her hatred fixated on the Jedi in particular. As Barriss saw it, the Jedi had completely abandoned their values in fighting in the Clone Wars and had become just as corrupt as their enemies. All of this leads into one last uncomfortable question. To what degree was Barriss right? Obviously, bombing the Jedi Temple and framing Ahsoka were both unequivocally evil acts, but was there some truth to the beliefs that motivated them? In canon, Ahsoka Tano thought so. To quote her, she had a point about the Republic and the Jedi. There was something wrong with them, and we were too locked into our traditions to see what it was. Barriss should have done something else. She shouldn't have killed anyone, and she definitely shouldn't have framed me for it, but if we'd listened to her, really listened, we might have been able to stop Palpatine before he took power. Now, as a quick clarification, we've been talking exclusively about Legends so far, but Ahsoka's quote mostly hits the nail on the head even if it's from a different timeline. Now, Barriss's observations weren't entirely spot on. It was neither fair nor honest to blame the Jedi for starting or fighting in the Clone Wars. They had zero choice in the matter. The Jedi were conscripted to serve as generals by the Senate, and refusing the order would not only have been suicidal, but pointless as well. The brutality of the Clone Wars had little to do with the Jedi. After all, the whole conflict was orchestrated by the Sith, who would have made sure that things got bloody no matter what. Darth Sidious created a no-win situation for the Jedi Order. They could either fight and worsen the galaxy's misery, or be branded traitors and rendered powerless to stop the bloodshed. But the Jedi were far from innocent, and Barriss was absolutely correct in saying that many of them had fallen from the path of the light. They had no choice but to fight in the Clone Wars, but they absolutely had a choice in dedicating themselves so completely to their roles in the GAR. They started to think as generals first and Jedi second, getting so caught up in winning the war that they became blind to the struggles of the innocent. In many ways, the Jedi Order really had become an army fighting for the dark side. The Republic was not on the right side in the Clone Wars. There was no right side in the Clone Wars. Both the Republic and the CIS fought for the dark side, both in the sense that they were commanded by the Sith, and in the sense that they were deeply evil in their own right. The Jedi fought for the Republic because they saw it as the embodiment of civilization, as a bastion of freedom standing against the threat of the Sith. But the Republic was none of those things. It was an empire in all but name, suppressing the rights of its citizens and killing billions of innocents as it fought to keep the galaxy under its rule. The separatist movement may have been co-opted by the Sith and by vile megacorporations, but many of the original separatists were absolutely right about how tyrannical the Republic was, especially in the Outer Rim. By and large, we're of the opinion that the Jedi Order is severely overheated. But there's one major point of criticism about the Jedi that's absolutely right. The Jedi were too attached to the Republic. They allowed themselves to become just another arm of a rather repulsive government that didn't give two Sith about many of its citizens, hampering their ability to defend the balance of the Force. During the Clone Wars, they sank even further, becoming generals for the Republic and directly participating in the Republic's destruction of innocent lives. Barriss Offee was one of the few beings in the galaxy who understood this, at least before it was too late. So that's our look at why Barriss Offee carried out the Jedi Temple bombing. But what do you think? What are your personal thoughts about Barriss Offee? Let us know all that and more in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.